Episode 20 begins upstairs in Sakura's room at the Avalon residence. Remember Meilin Ray from the last episode? Well, guess what? She's going to be at Sakura's school, but we'll get back to that later. Well, good news for Sakura is because thanks to her brother, the birdhouse is finished for the woodshop project. Also, good news for her, she just finished her summer homework, and now that summer break is over, it's time for her to get back to school with her friends. So after Sakura made a compliment with Kiro, and that's when Sakura heard the voice of both her and Tori's father, Aiden, saying, "Hey, hurry up there. You're going to be late." "I'll be right down," Sakura said. So long story short, after grabbing the bag that has the finished birdhouse, she goes downstairs and she puts her rollerblades on and joins up with her brother on his bicycle. And so both of them head off. But before they do, Sakura and Tori's father had told them that he'll be making dinner later. And he says, "Oh, by the way, don't give each other a hard time, okay?" And so both Sakura and Tori head to their schools. So after Sakura and Tori had picked up Julian on the way, that's when Julian was asked by his best friend Tori and Sakura's brother, of course, if he would be invited to dinner later. Then Tori told his best friend, "Oh, by the way, our dad is making dinner." So even though Julian agrees with his best friend, and that's when Tori pleaded the case to say, "Well, it's better than what my sister could make." "Be nice," Sakura said. Well, it happens to be that Julian agrees with Sakura. So after Julian and Sakura were having a conversation with each other, that's when Sakura's brother Tori made a sarcastic remark by asking the question to Sakura to say, "Weren't you that girl that was spotted on the bridge last night?" The reason why he's asking about it is because he said that he read an article about it in the newspaper. So Sakura says, "What do you mean by that?" Then Tori says, "Well, word has it that there's a girl that looks exactly like you, and she has a weird costume, and she's beating up everyone on the bridge that leads to Penguin Park." Now, Julian, who agrees with his best friend, he said, word also has it that there are martial art experts that were victims of the attack. And the thing of it is that there are two at least afraid to talk about it. "So you're saying there's a girl that looks just like me?" Sakura asked. "Yeah," Tori says, "because word has it that I figured it may be you." And of course, Sakura's not exactly happy about it. So good news, Sakura makes it to her school on time and to join up with her friends. So meanwhile at Sakura's classroom, that's when she said hello to her best friend Madison, who was sitting at her desk. So Madison, who's Sakura's best friend, says, "Oh, guess what? Lee hasn't showed up yet." Then Madison says, "Well, this is weird. This is not like him. He always shows up early. Do you suppose he may be capturing a you-know-what somehow?" Sakura asked. Then Madison says, "Nah, he wouldn't do that without you." Then Madison had a hunch that maybe he gave up. Then it's Sakura's turn to plead her case to her best friend to say, "Not a chance." And then suddenly, just minutes later, Lee shows up. So as soon as he arrived in the classroom, all he did was sit at his desk with his head down. So you know what this means. Both Sakura and Madison were not prepared for what they're about to witness. And that's when their teacher, Mr. Terada, came into the classroom to say good morning, everyone, and everyone went to their desks. Then Mr. Terada says, "Guess what? I got some good news. We got an exchange student that's joining us today." And here comes Meilin now. Now remember, as I mentioned before, Meilin was the exact same person that showed up at Lee's apartment since in the last episode. So before Meilin can introduce herself to the class, by the teacher of course, that's when she told her cousin Lee, "I thought we were walking to school together." Once Meilin stepped forward in front of the class, Mr. Terada said that Meilin came from Hong Kong, just like what Lee did. So Sakura wants to know from Lee if he knew the person, but before he can answer, that's when Meilin approached her. So she says, and I quote, "I'm just here to warn you. Back away." So you know what this means. This is going to be the second longest day that Sakura ever had. Oh, by the way, it's been a year since Lee has transferred to her school, so now it's Meilin's turn. So later that afternoon during lunch, that's when Sakura, Madison, Chelsea, Nikki, and Rita were all sitting on the grass. And I'm not sure who said it, but one of them said, "Wow, it looks like this new kid's got a beat on you. Talk about a first impression." But then the boys Lee and Zachary show up. So after Zach pleaded a case with his cousin Chelsea that he and Lee are planning to eat in the cafeteria. But then Meilin says, "Hey Lee, wait for me!" And she's carrying a basket full of lunch. So then while Lee and Meilin are walking along, that's when Meilin pleaded her case to say that her father used to be transferred to the school that she went to and etc. And of course, she says that now that we're at the same school, I can make lunch for you. You can't just do that, Lee says when it's his turn to speak in his case. Then Maylin has her turn to ask a question. What do you mean I can't? Well, you can't just make lunch, that's all, Lee says. So Maylin went ahead and sat on a bench. So while she was unpacking lunch, Maylin says, "Well, this is great. This will be like old times. We're pretending to be card captors." So then when it's Lee's turn to plead his case, he said, "What are you talking about? I am a card captor." Then Maylin says, "True, but someone else was, according to your lazing board." Then Lee says, "Yeah, well, that's true too, but we're not very good at it." Then Maylin has her turn to say, "Boy, I'm not surprised." Then Maylin says, "Well, you know the saying, nobody is a better magician than you are." Then Lee pleaded his case to say how he wanted to help Sakura and it'll be bad news if they don't, and etc. And that's when Malin says, "I knew it. She's got the cards right." So as Malin looks over her shoulder to look at Sakura, that's when Madison, her best friend, was asking the question, "Sakura, are you okay?" "I just had a sudden chill, that's all," Sakura said. So back with Lee and Meilin, that's when Lee explains that her name's Sakura, that she stumbled onto that since 18 episodes ago, and etc. So then it's Meilin's turn to plead her case to say Sakura doesn't have a clue, doesn't she? Then Meilin says, "As a matter of fact, in my case, I can help you more than she can." "Listen to me, Lee," Meilin says. "I can capture these cloud cards for you without a problem." And of course, in Lee's case, he does not like this plan at all. Later inside the school's gymnasium, it is now time for gym class now that lunch break is over. So, after the sound of the gym teacher's whistle, everybody lined up. So the gym teacher says, "Hey everyone, good news, we're doing gymnastics today." Then the gym teacher says that even better, we're doing cartwheels. After everyone cheers with excitement, that's when Madison asks Sakura a question. "How are you going to start?" Sakura didn't answer because she hesitated. And then behind her was Meilin, and she was busy glaring at her. And as you could tell, Lee, who was also in gym class, didn't like it a bit. So, one by one, just the way it's planned, one of the students are doing cartwheels. So after the two students have their turn, so when the gym teacher asked who was next, Meilin raised her hand. So she went ahead and gave it her all. So after Meilin was finished, the three girls that were clapping with excitement were Chelsea, Nikki, and Rita. Even Sakura and Madison were clapping and applauding. And Sakura says, "Hey, not bad." And then the gym teacher says, "Okay, Sakura, it's your turn." So Sakura went ahead and gave it her all. And then after that, everyone cheered. So now that everybody finished clapping, that's when the gym teacher says, "Let's boost up the advantage a little bit with some advantage skills." So after Mei Lin and Sakura are like, "Huh?" And that's when the gym teacher says, "Oh, come on, relax. It's not a competition or anything." And then the gym teacher says, "Just show us your best moves, that's all." And both Meilin and Sakura says, "Okay." So meanwhile in the school's auditorium, that's when both of the girls showed their skills the best way they knew how. So Meilin went first. So after Meilin finished her turn, everyone clapped and applauded, including Zachary. He seemed impressed. So then Sakura went next and did her routine. So after Sakura finished her turn, everyone clapped and applauded. Well, except for Meilin, and she's not very happy at all. So later that night at the Avalon residence, after Sakura got home from school, she is very exhausted because she and Meilin have been competitive throughout gym class all day long. So meanwhile in Sakura's room, that's when Sakura pleaded her case to Kiro to say, "Wow, Meilin's been on my case all day long at school today." So Kiro has his turn to plead his case to say, "Boy, someone's got reinforcements, huh?" "Well, she is very competitive," Sakura says, "and every time I turn around it looks like she's trying to pick a fight with me or something." "We'll fight back or something," Kiro says, but Sakura shakes her head and said that there was no way. But then she heard a voice of her father saying, "It's dinner time." "I'll be right down," Sakura said. And then she tells Carol that there is no way she's picking a fight with anybody. "I just want to capture cards, that's all." And so she heads off downstairs. But before she could do that, she promised Carol to bring some dessert on the way. So meanwhile, in the dining room downstairs, everyone was having dinner. Sakura, her brother, her father, and of course her brother's best friend. So Julian, who's Sakura's brother's best friend, pleaded his case to Sakura to say, "Gee, you look quiet this evening. What's going on with you? Are you okay?" "Well, I'm just thinking," Sakura said. Then Sakura's brother Tori just made a comment that's very cruel to say, "Oh, sure, so you could beat up a martial expert and be back by dessert, right?" And of course, she kicked him in the leg. Then it's Sakura and Tori's father Aiden's turn to plead his case to say, "You know what's weird? They haven't caught this mysterious girl yet." "Well, the way I see it," Aiden says, "this is no ordinary girl I've ever seen. And if that were the case, then somebody would have found out about it." So Sakura has her turn to ask a question. Where did it happen? When? Then Julian looks at the exact same article that Tori was looking at earlier that morning, and he saw something very interesting. Then Julian says, "Well, according to this newspaper article that your brother is looking at earlier, the attack takes place at Penguin Park." Then Sakura couldn't help but wonder if that was the same mysterious girl that both her brother and her brother's best friend had been talking about earlier that morning. Then Tori says, "Yep, it's the same mysterious girl, all right." Then Aiden says, "Wait, there's more, because according to the newspaper article that Julian's looking at, it said that whoever this mysterious girl is, it picks a fight with everyone, especially martial art experts. And they were being attacked on the bridge, just like what Tori said earlier that morning." Julian, who agrees with Aiden, says that's not all. The article also said that the mysterious girls who beat up the martial art experts didn't take any money. And that's because, according to Julian, the report also says that none of the martial art expert has been robbed in any way. Then Aiden, who agrees with Julian, and said, "By golly, you're right. It's not the test of wills, it's a test of strength." So Aiden asked Tori a question. "Didn't you study karate? I mean, it is part of the discipline, right?" Then Tori says, "Of course, but it depends on how stronger your opponents are." Then Julian says, "Wait, here's the catch. Because according to the newspaper article, it says the young girl is wearing a special kind of costume, like no one has ever seen before." Sakura was in shock, and she's asking Julian, "Are you saying that the girl's costume is very somewhat unusual?" And of course, Julian nodded. So, in other words, yes. So Sakura, after she learned it from Julian, "So you know what this means. It was time for her to go to Penguin Park." So meanwhile at Penguin Park, there's Sakura in her pink battle suit. And of course, Kiro's there too, and so's her best friend, Madison. And she does what she knows best, recorded on her video camera. So Sakura, although supportive, just told Madison, "I hope I don't get caught wearing this tonight." So long story short, after Kiro had a complaint, that's when Madison says, "Well, you know the saying, everyone loves a critic." So long story short, back with Kiro, he thought he saw something in the water that's under the bridge. Then he lets Sakura and Madison know that, yep, it is definitely a you know what. So when Sakura and Madison reach to the railing of the bridge, that's when she says, "You know something? You're right, Kiro." And then Madison wants to know, but what kind of card is it? But before Madison can answer, that's when Meilin says, "I can give you a hint. It's a fight card." Then when Madison and Sakura looked over their shoulders, there's Meilin now, and she's dressed in her yin yang battlesuit and red ribbons to match. And I gotta tell you, it looked great. Oh, by the way, she's on the lamppost. So then when Meilin jumped down, that's when both Madison, Kiro, and Sakura were looking at her. Then Kiro goes first to speak in his case to say, "Let me guess, you're Lee's girlfriend, right?" Then Meilin asks Sakura a question. "Do you really think you could catch a card like that?" Well, Sakura hesitated, and then Meilin says, "Well, don't worry about it because I'm helping him now." "So you know what," Meilin said, "you can just get lost." So Kiro has his turn to speak in his case to tell Meilin how dare she say something like that. And of course, he made his case to say Sakura's chosen for this. "So what are you, a stuffed toy or something?" Meilin asked. "Well, it just so happens," Sakura said, when it's her turn to plead her case. "Kiro Barros is the guardian of the seal." When Meilin found out from Sakura, she says, "What? You mean this little guy? He's the guardian beast?" Then Kiro, when it's his turn to plead his case, he says, "Well, you got that right." So long story short, Meilin stepped up to Sakura and Madison. And she says, "Well, you may have the guardian beast, and I have Lee Shoron. So I'm warning you, stay away." But then suddenly something or someone jumped up out of the water. It's the same mysterious girl that Julian's been reading about in the paper earlier before Sakura left to go to Penguin Park. It's the fight card's form, all right. And of course, she's all dressed up in that strange costume. So when the fight card's form is on the railing of the bridge, that's what Sakura knew, that what Julian said was true. Also, that explains why the martial art experts are being attacked, and then they were never robbed in any way. Now, Madison, on the other hand, has complimented on the outfit that the fight card form wears, and she can tell that she's very impressed. Anyway, back with Sakura and Mei Lin, that's when Kira went up to Sakura and says, "Use extreme caution. This fight card's form has some serious fighting skills." And of course, in other words, she's a skilled warrior. But then all of a sudden, the fight card's form began the attack. But luckily for Sakura, she dodges her attack. Next thing you know, Sakura, Madison, and of course Mei Lin are on the bridge. Sakura just told Carol, "Phew, well, that was close." "Well, that's why they call it the fight card," Carol said. "And the reason for it is because it can pick stronger opponents, the ones that have all the fighting skills that it needs." Next thing you know, the fight card's form of a mysterious girl looks straight at Mei Lin in her yin yang outfit. And that's when you know what this means. The fight card's form wants to have a battle with her. A hand to hand combat, if you will. So back with Sakura and Kiro, that's when Sakura says, "Wait a minute, it wants to fight me, Lin?" "Well, let's just hope she's good as she thinks she is," Kiro said. So, as you may have guessed it, both Meilin and of course the fight card's form are having a combat with each other, hand to hand, if you will. So after Meilin had finished round one with the fight card's form, Sakura can tell that she was impressed. And she says, "Wow, Meilin does have some fighting skills." Then Meilin started pleading her case to say, "I'm the best fighter there is. Some card captor you turn out to be. You can't even handle a fight card." As soon as the fight card's form gets up, it's now time for round two. For Meilin, of course. So during round two of the fight, that's when Meilin gave it her all the best way she knew how. And as the fight goes on and on and on and on, that was until the fight card's form knocked her down, But just when things are looking bad for Meilin, guess who decided to come to the rescue to lend a hand, to coin a phrase? None other than her cousin, Lee. So after the fight cards form went into the water thanks to Lee's flying kick, that's when Lee pleaded his case by asking a question to Meilin. What are you doing here? Then Meilin pleaded her case to say, I thought we were partners in this. So Madison and Sakura later show up, and of course Sakura goes first to ask Meilin, are you okay? Meilin not only said that she's okay, but she says, well, I am a trained fighter after all. Well, I had to give credit to you, Kiro says. You do have some skills. So after Meilin had pleaded her case to say she didn't like to be insulted like that, and that's when Kiro made a sarcastic remark to say, ooh, I'm really scared. And Meilin says, really? You should be. Then Lee pleaded his case to ask Meilin, what did you do with my lazing board? Give it to me, right now. Then Lee just let slip to Meilin to ask the question of why did she have to take it out of his house without asking permission. Then it's Meilin's turn to let slip in front of Lee to say, I promised Wayne Wei that I wouldn't say a word. I couldn't tell you. And that made Lee very annoyed. Then Lee says, don't you get it? You just cannot mess with things you don't understand or let alone comprehend. Sakura wanted to know from Kiro, weren't they supposed to be partners? Well, Kiro just let something slip to Sakura. He said that the reason why Meilin took Lee's on board in the first place is because she wanted to find the fight card. Then Sakura's turn to ask a question. What's this got to do with Meilin anyway? Well, granted, she is a good fighter. She does have some skills, Kiro says, but unfortunately she doesn't have any magical powers as Lee did. Meilin, who heard that, got upset, and that's when, of course, says, you mean... Yep, you guessed it. Meilin's no Cardcaptor at all, Kiro said. So Meilin asked Kiro a question. What do you know about it anyway? So Lee has his turn to say, oh, Meilin. So you know what this means. Meilin has no choice but to give Lee's Leeson board back. So she says, here, you can have it back. It doesn't work for me anyhow. Then Meilin just let slip to Lee the reason why she's borrowing the leasing board to begin with is because she was asking Wei Wei if he could help her. But she said, and I quote, there's a problem. He couldn't figure that thing out either. Then Lee has his turn to ask a question. Are you crazy? Capturing cards is not a game. You know, catching cards can be very dangerous. You could get hurt, Lee said. Then Meilin says, well, I guess you'll have to teach me, right? But Lee says, I can't. It doesn't work that way. It's magic. So, long story short, after Madison pleaded her case, that's when Kira says, well, she is a fighter, but she's no quitter. I can admit to that. So Lee pleaded his case to Meilin. I think you should leave. You don't really belong here anyway. But then suddenly his lazing board just located the fight card, and wouldn't you know it, it again jumps out of the water just like it did before the first time. And then suddenly, just like that, the fight card's form's powerful kick just knocks Lee against the bridge, knocking him unconsciousness. He'll be all right. So when Sakura, Madison, and Meilin ran over to Lee, Meilin was asking him, are you okay? So when Lee was finally awake and looked at Meilin, he told her that he's okay. So after Meilin got that support from Lee to say that he was okay, she says, I'm sorry, but this is all my fault. Then Meilin looks over her shoulder to stare at the fight card's image that's still standing on the bridge. So Meilin pleaded her case to say, well, you may be a fight card, but you're no match for me. She tells this to the fight card's image. But Lee says, wait a minute, but you know what this means? That means Meilin is taking it on for the third time, so it's now time for round 3. So it was during round three that the fight continues to go on and on and on and on. But then when Sakura runs up to Lee, well, he's okay other than his arm had been hurt. And of course, she made an omission to say, gee, she is pretty good. Then it's Lee's turn to plead his case to Sakura to say, well, that may be true, but fighting a card like that is a little different than that. So back with Meilin and the fight cards form continue to have a combat with each other on the bridge. And that's when, just when things were looking worse, that's when Meilin runs towards Penguin Park and with the fight cards form chasing her. So after Sakura, Madison, and Kiro had arrived at Penguin Park, while the battle was still going on, that's when Sakura says, "Tell me you have a plan, quick!" Then Kiro says, "Well, you need the strongest card." "But which one?" Sakura said. "You know, the same card that you caught back at the zoo just 7 episodes ago. The power card." But before that can get underway, that's when Kiro says, "But there's a catch. The only way you can win against the fight cards is if you can battle it out." When Sakura heard that, she says, "What? You mean I have to fight against this thing?" So, long story short, after Meilin is having a battle of continuing with the fight cards form, that's when Sakura says, "Are you sure there's no other way?" "Well, you are a card captor after all," Kiro said. "You have to. There's no other way." "So you need to do what's needed to be done," Kiro said. "You're absolutely right," Sakura says. And then Madison suggested that Sakura can use the power card, as I mentioned before. So following her best friend's suggestion, that's what Sakura did. So back with Meilin, things looked hopeless for her. And just when the fight cards form was about to finish her off, so Sakura says, "Hold it right there." And that's when the fight cards form looked over her shoulder, and there was Sakura glowing, full of power to coin a phrase. So it's now Sakura's turn to go against the fight cards form. At first she misses her, and then Kiro says, "Watch out behind you." And so Sakura turned around, and then before you know it, the power card overpowers the fight card by knocking her unconscious with Sakura's wand, of course. So long story short, after that battle, it's now up to Sakura to seal up the fight card, in which she did. So the fight card makes it number 20 on the list. Sakura's best friend, as always, has it on her video camera. As for Lee, he picks up his cousin Meilin and has her arm draped around his shoulder and asking her, "Are you okay?" So Meilin told Lee, "Don't worry, I'm fine." But that was until she saw Sakura catching the fight card, and she got very upset. Then she says, "No fair! I would have captured that card." No offense, Meilin," Sakura says, "but we did it. We did it together." Then Sakura says, "Think about it. If it wasn't for your fighting skills, I would have done the rest." But before Sakura can finish her sentence, that's when Meilin approached her and says, "Don't even go there with your sympathy. I can see that you're up to something." Then Meilin says, "Well, one way or another, we're going to bury you. Just wait and see." And then you can tell that Madison's very horrified. So Madison, who was looking at Carol to say, "You know something? Call me crazy, but capturing card cards is going to be a lot difficult than it looks." "You're not kidding," Carol says, "because in my case, Meilin is an unexpected glitch that's waiting to happen." "Are you sure?" Madison asked. "Of course I'm sure," Carol says. "So you know what this means." And as I said before, Sakura's now going to have two rivals to deal with. Now that she has 20 cards so far, and Lee has only two. But there's still more to go. So that ends episode 20.